Yeah, so this is second video, and this is regarding the important topics that you need to focus in chapter second 22nd, uh, 11th standard. Okay, that is chemical coordination and integration. So if you have remembered this, you can recollect this lesson the same as plant growth regulation. So what we have to focus is here, where exactly produced by which organs, right? So here this what is a this endocrine system is well developed in the case of humans, so we have to focus on the organs and which cells they secrete this sort of hormones and how they are showing the impact, or how they are having impact on different tissues or cells, and by through which mechanism, right? Whether the hormones are able to cross the cellular barrier, or they are actually transported by some certain proteins that we need to focus more. So let's see what are the topics that you need to really revise thoroughly, especially the names of glands, right? So we have we have got heterocrine glands also, right? For example, testis and pancreas. So they have dual functions, right? They produce cells, at the same time they produce these hormones. So both they act as endocrine and exocrine. So you need to focus on these heterocrine glands, right? So dual functions. So they are little exceptional. So every time in the case of human physiology, you have to focus on the exceptional cases, right? So heterocrine is little exceptional cases. So exocrine and endocrine organs and their functions that you need to focus. So especially hormones, what is the mechanism, or what are the types of hormones we can get it, like tropic hormones and non-tropic hormones. Tropic hormones are the hormones stimulate other endocrine glands to produce or secrete hormones, right? For example, hypothalamus is actually for example, you take TSH, right? Thyroid stimulating hormone produced by pituitary gland is actually stimulating the release of thyroxine. So this is how one hormone would actually put pressure on or stimulate the other endocrine gland to produce its secrete the hormones. Non-tropic, or these are the hormones stimulates vital cellular processes including metabolism. So actually they do not stimulate the release of other hormones. Okay, for example, prolactin. So prolactin secreted by anterior pituitary, right? AP, if you have remember. I gave mnemonic also, anterior pituitary and posterior pituitary. AP, how you have to remember, right? So this anterior pituitary will get stimulated for the production of the milk in the women's breast tissue. So this breast tissue or cells is stimulated to produce certain, or start its metabolism. So these are non-trophic hormones, right? And according to the chemical composition, hormones can be divided or classified into steroid hormones and protein or peptide hormones like insulin, and amine hormones like thyroxine, steroid like sex steroids, aldosterone, etc. So these are the classification is utmost important, right? So the nature of the hormone, I many times have suggested you to make a tabular form, especially in this chemical coordination, where you need to focus on the chemical nature also, whether they are steroids. So steroids has a chemical property that they can easily cross the cellular barrier easily, the plasma membrane. Proteins, very tough, right? So steroid hormones, protein or peptide hormones, and amine hormones, right? At the same time, there are some local hormones where on the site itself they produce local, right? For example, local hormones include histamine, so which involves in allergic reaction. Cytokines, you know how they really, these are polypeptide hormones which helps in defense mechanisms, right? So these are cytokine barriers, and a few things we already studied in immunity, innate immunity, right? So these are the different hormones we get in local hormones. So different types of hormones they may give in column A and column B, so you should be very much careful in it, right? And each organ and its associated hormone and its function is what you need to make a tabular form, and you have to practice. So for example, ovaries Female gonad perform dual function. Testis performs dual functions where they produce ova and also they release certain hormones. In the same case, testis also. Like that, thymus gland, thyroid gland, hypothalamus, right? Pineal body. What are the secretions and what are the roles that you need to focus? So within the pituitary gland, again you have got three divisions, right? Is pars, distalis, pars intermedia, right? Posterior, anterior, right? Two of the things which are covered in your NCERT, pars, distalis and intermedia, right? Where you have to more focus on this MSH also, melanocyte stimulating hormone, which is a peptide like of hormone. I'll try to send this worksheet also. It is very useful. Okay, that you will be having a tabular form where the gland will be there and its major hormone secretion, its type, whether it's a peptide or steroid or what kind of a nature of the compound, nature of the hormone, and then their action. So I will send that worksheet also. Please try to focus on this. Especially you have to rely on this table, right? So once you get this table done, so this entire lesson would be very easy, just like how animal kingdom is just gave in one single table. So glands, I'll send the worksheet also. Glands and where exactly they're released, right? What is their mode of what is the mode of action, at the same time what is the site of action, right? So these are the things that you need to focus. So when it comes to the mechanism of hormone action, we have different types too. The two different types of mechanism of action we have, right? So if you remember, one is steroid hormone action through intracellular receptors. So the steroids directly go into the cell and they interact with the intracellular receptors. When it comes to peptide hormone, this peptide hormone action through extracellular receptors. So if you consider this is a cell, so if my head is a receptor, right? So in steroid, the receptors are present intracellular, so within the cytoplasm. When it comes to peptide hormone, these receptors are present outside the membrane like this. So my head would actually receive this hormone. So extracellular, intracellular. So these are the two different type of mechanism and nature of hormones and these mechanisms of hormones that you need to focus, right? So they may ask in true pick the correct statement, pick the incorrect statement, etc. That would be asked, right? And then coming to the regulation of hormone action, so how this regulation would be taking place. So when it comes to regulation, we have feedback control of hormones. It means less secretion of a hormones is sometimes depend upon the hormone secreted by the other glands, right? For example, hypothalamus is stimulated by some external stimuli and produces releasing hormone GnRH, and then GnRH again they have a effect on pituitary gland and they release as FSH and LSH, etc. So these hyposecretions give a feedback message to the organs to which they have to produce, and feedback control of metabolites is the same way, and feedback controlled by nervous system. So these are the either metabolites they will be controlling or giving a feedback, or nervous system will give feedback, or hormones would be giving the feedback. Okay, whether hypo or hyper secretion, if it needs to control the secretion of these hormones. Is that clear? And finally we have when it comes to control of hormone action, we have positive feedback loop, right? So here we are talking about, first we talked about regulation, now we are talking about control, how much we have to produce, right? So there are two types. We have control of hormone action, that is, one is positive feedback and negative feedback. Okay, so in positive feedback, hormones released by one gland stimulate the other gland, which further leads to even more significant changes in some same direction. One gland to other gland, A to B to C to D, like that. So it acts as a self-amplifying cycle that accelerates a process. So in this way, positively it would be, it means one after the other, one after the other, one organ after the other, these organs would get stimulated and the hormones would be released, right? And the next one is uh, while in the negative feedback, the end product of the biochemical process inhibits its own production. So in the positive regulation, it's keep on secreting, but in the negative regulation, so for example, there are 10 VMCs here, but secretion of or release of 100 VMCs would actually inhibit the production of the VMCs itself. It means the molecules, if they have 10, that's 10 means they are necessary number, adequate number. If more than 10 means these molecules, the 11th or 12th or the 15th molecule would go and inhibit this process of this secretion, so that it's negatively inhibiting or giving the feedback, isn't it? And finally we have got endocrine disorders, right? So when we talk about endocrine disorders, especially you should be focusing on you know disorders which are specifically related to growth, IQ, etc. Right? So there are acromegaly, Addison's disease, right? And then cretinism, we have diabetes insipidus, diabetes mellitus, right? And we have got gigantia, so where Graves disease, right? So these are all different disease conditions, and what hormone does it, is hypo or hyper secretion, and what are the symptoms of it, right? So this is how you need to focus on these diseases, right? So these are the highlights of this lesson, right? And hope you utilize this, and if you have doubts you can uh, you can ask me at any point of time. So these are the hotspots, or these are the things that you need to cover, or these are the these are the topics that you need to stay and you have to study for a while, isn't it? I hope this is clear, and if you have doubts you please ask me. Thank you.